What's up, Sales RXers, and welcome to this week's episode. Right now, a lot of companies are trying to go enterprise, and it makes sense. We don't want to spend our time trying to gather 100 small accounts. We'd rather try to find 10 big accounts. And that can be really challenging, especially if your product or your sales process is not ready to technically move up market. So those are two things I encourage you to look at first before you really dive into landing those key accounts. But when you're ready to land those key accounts, I encourage you to listen closely to our guest this week. We have none other than Leslie Venetz, who is the founder of Sales Team Builder. So she goes into companies and really helps them perfect their sales process and work towards maximizing their revenue performance. She's broken into some massive accounts, as we talk about in this podcast here, when she was not only a sales leader, but an individual contributor herself. And so we're going to learn a little bit about what it takes to break into those key accounts and how to build out that process to break into those key accounts. So let's jump right in. So Leslie, I'm really thrilled to have you on the podcast today as a fellow TikToker who shares a lot of great sales advice. I know that we've kind of been interacting with one another virtually for the better half of a year now, but great to be here digitally in person, to be recording this episode and really focusing on how to be buyer-centric and break into key accounts. I feel like a lot of people out there can talk all day long about doing effective discovery, or even more higher up on the funnel, talking about cold calling and cold emailing. But a lot of the advice, as you probably know, is really geared towards SMB, maybe mid-market at best. And when it comes to those key accounts, enterprise, even the commercial space, it's really tough when you're trying to break into a big company to get multiple stakeholders involved, get everybody bought in, and even get them to take the time to evaluate or even thinking about an evaluation of your product or service. So I really want to dig deep with you on the why should we even be focused on this? What does it really take? What are some things that we can do, and some actionable tips for the listeners who might be interested in breaking into key accounts and expanding their market a little bit? So tell us a little bit about this buyer-centric initiative and breaking into key accounts and your thoughts behind it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, everybody wants a big, sexy logo behind their name, right? I feel like that's kind of aspirational. Even I talk to a lot of folks that are new, maybe SMB AEs, or they've just moved to mid-market. And that's always the next step. Like, when do I get to enterprise? When do I get to put those big logos against my name? And the sort of answer is in the question. Like, the buyer-centric approach to closing key accounts is that in order to close a key account, you have to have a very buyer-centric account. You can't get away with a lot of the maybe kind of generic or self or company-centered stuff that may work if you're selling to small to medium-sized businesses, and it kind of starts working less and less, both the higher you go up in title and the higher you go up in revenue band. So maybe, like, big picture, what buyer-centric means to me is that we are ensuring that every touch point with our prospect is relevant and valuable. I think that's the crux of it. And so the maybe sort of like counterpoint to that, and everybody listening has gotten one of these emails. They're the emails that start with, "Hi, I'm Leslie Venetz, the founder of Sales Team Builder. We do." Or, "Hello, Sales Team Builder is a sales consulting company. We help companies, blah, 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 blah." Like, it's just like the heavy I and we language. And then the next sentence next probably two sentences of that type of email are like a feature drop. And then it's like, "Would you like to meet Tuesday at 10 or 2 to talk about the thing that I have not told you why you should care about?" So I think the crux of what has helped me penetrate some of arguably the biggest logos in the entire world is really challenging myself with every script, with every proposal, with every demo, with every email, to be like, is this about me or is this about them? Like, why genuinely should they give, can we curse on this, a crap?
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah. I had that moment happen earlier where I was like, I don't know if this is what we can do, but I'll say crap. Yeah, crap.
Give a heck.
But yeah. No, you can feel free to swear. Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because even some of the biggest companies I've noticed, I still get canned emails from them, and it's all about, listen, I know what you do. Some would call you the most, arguably the best unicorn startup of this side of the decade. I know what you do. I'm very aware of it, but where is it going to affect me in my day to day, and more selfishly, my position? How is it going to make me better at my job so I can get that next promotion, so I can prove that I know what I'm doing and I'm effective with my work and get that next promotion? If I'm a sales leader and I'm trying to go up market, where should I start in terms of figuring out how to create a process for breaking into key accounts? Like, is it as simple as just understanding how to reach out to multiple prospects at the company that are relevant at the same time and delegating that to my reps and that training? Or is there something bigger and beyond that that I should do before pursuing that, those key accounts?
Both. Both. I think if it was a list, it's not like pick A, pick B, pick C, pick D. It's like J, all of the above. Breaking into key accounts it's not easy. And it definitely does take a multi-prong approach. But something you brought up was like, how do I reach all of the people that are going to be part of that buying committee? So I think that's a good place to start. And the way that I think about that from beginning with cold outreach is I will run 2 different types of cold outreach campaigns. So I've spent most of my career penetrating the C-suite. So like I really have a clear C-suite buyer. So I'm going to run a campaign to that C-suite buyer that is going to have more personalized touches. I'm a huge fan of doing a handwritten note, even. Love a little piece of handwritten direct mail, or you can use, like there's so many direct mail providers out there now that are doing cool stuff. So I'm going to run a very high value campaign. I'm going to spend most of my time that I spend personalizing that campaign. And that is only going to go to the decision makers. And then I'm going to create another campaign. That's my influencer campaign. Those calls to action are going to be very different. When I'm in my decision maker campaign, the calls to action are going to be like, would it make sense to talk? Does it make sense to learn more? Here's my link to meet, whatever it is. Like I'm going to be specifically asking for a meeting. In my influencer campaigns, it is a lot more focused on like those deposits, meaning those value drops. So things like a white paper, a relevant webinar, a case study, things that are going to be interesting to them. And my end goal with that 2-pronged approach, Chet, is knowing that after I meet with the, let's say CFO, that's who my ICP is, after I meet with my ideal customer profile, after I meet with that person, I know that they're going to go talk to their direct reports. Like you have to go into it and build a strategy knowing that there is a single decision maker when you're looking at, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. And my hope is my influencer campaign has put me in a position where the CFO says, hey, I just got off a call with Sales Team Builder. What do you know about them? And those influencers say things like, oh, actually, I think I got a white paper from them a couple of weeks ago. It was great. Or, you know what? I read a really interesting case study from them last month. And I thought that they'd be kind of relevant to what we do. So I'm really in those influencer campaigns. It is like credibility, education, and like some sort of brand recognition that is going to support a positive reaction post my meeting with the CFO that will kind of catalyze the deal a bit. So that's idea 1. Let me pause there because I feel like that's already kind of a big concept.
I do have a question about it.
Yeah.
So you're running these campaigns simultaneously, or do you have a top-down approach or a bottoms-up approach? Because the reason I ask that is I've heard reps before get really concerned about talking to an influencer and then also talking to a decision maker, because they're like, what if that influencer thinks I went over their head, or vice versa? What if the decision maker feels like, oh, I'm just looking for anybody to talk to at the company because they wouldn't talk to me because they've seen my emails. So I see where that concern kind of lies sometimes, why people wait and they just sequence different people at the company after other people have finished sequences. But you're saying you run these campaigns simultaneously. Is that correct?
simultaneously, but that's a really valid question. One of the reasons that it works is because you're not asking to meet with the influencers. So there's like
Mm,
very different intent. Because it
yeah.
could get really dicey if all of a sudden three different influencers are like, sure, I'll book into your diary. And you're like,
Yeah.
shoot. I really like to lead with an honest approach too. So, I mean, you never want to do too many influencers. So in this example, it would be like CFO and CFO minus one. So it's maybe two, three, four people that I think are going to be on that I'm certain are going to be on that buying committee. I'm not going into this thinking that I have 100% touched every single person the CFO is going to talk to. I'm just hoping that one or two people, when they ask, are like, yeah, they're legit. You should keep talking to them. Give them the time of day. But if you are worried about that, it is totally okay in your email to have a PS. I'm also reaching out to Bobby Sue and Billy Joe about this. That's okay. Like just full transparency there. But yeah, I run them simultaneously because I want I want those conversations. I want the internal conversations to be happening at the same time that I'm having the external conversation. So I'm definitely like optimizing for alignment there. Another thought I had about penetrating the C-suite when it comes to emails, because not everybody is necessarily on board with a personalized approach. Like full disclosure, I think people can over personalize. And I think that they can end up wasting time personalizing stuff that frankly doesn't need to be personalized.
Yeah.
I talk a lot, and I know like we've talked about this on LinkedIn and on TikTok, that I'm very much a person that values relevance and value over personalization. And that when we think about personalization, the way most folks are using it, which is honestly like often just like a field mapping, like brackets company, brackets title. And again, I'm like, people have seen those emails, right? And they start with, I see that you are the founder at Sales Team Builder. That's not personalization. Like, I see you breathe air. Me too. Let's meet. I think often that can have the opposite effect. Like it can hurt your reputation because it's sort of that lazy personalization. So hyper personalization means that you're really putting that value in that relevance first and foremost. And it goes back to how we started the conversation, right? Like that challenge that you have to ask yourself, like, is this about me or is this about them? Like, am I really giving them a reason to give a shit right now? Or am I just like checking in or, whatever it is? So one of the ways that I balance a kind of generic outreach approach with content that I'm really confident is valuable and relevant is to do super, super segmented campaigns. And so what this might look like if you were trying to penetrate key accounts is it is only a campaign for CFOs who have been in seat for less than a year of food and beverage companies that have over 5 billion in revenue. You're going to be able to get pretty sure about what matters to that specific subset of your audience, right? Granted, maybe it's only like 7 people in the entire campaign. But instead of 7 like completely deeply personalized campaigns, you're now getting a little bit of an opportunity to scale by creating something really, really good and then getting to run it with 7 people. I'll still often use frameworks like Sales Loft's 80-20 framework, where 20% of the email should be personalized, 80% can be templated, particularly at the beginning of campaigns. But I have had a lot of success with dialing back some of that generic personalization in favor of early in campaign hyper personalization, social touch points, and just really focusing on like specific relevance and value to those like, very niche down segments of your territory.
Yeah. You said something interesting. I want to pick your brain on this if that's okay. Um, the
I'm a captive audience
sequencing
right now, Chet. What you got?
the sequencing niche, it's
Yeah.
interesting that you care about the tenure of a C-suite executive. And I'd like to understand that a little bit more, because I could see on an influencer level with a manager who's been there less than a year, or even a director that's been there less than a year, or even if you take that back a little bit, less than 6 months, where they might be limited in their influence. But when it comes to a C-suite,
Mm.
I'm interested to understand how you see the difference in tenure between someone who's been there less than a year versus someone who's been there 2 to 3 years, what they would care about. Because to me, it's like once you reach the C-suite, like you're bouncing between C-suite jobs, right? Maybe when you're a manager and director, even like, head, like new head, like first time VP, might be a little bit different, because it's one, what's your level of influence as that person, but also then in that company, I can understand that. But I'd love to get your feedback on how you delineate the importance of whether a CFO has been there a year or 3 years, and how that plays into maybe
Yeah.
their decision making ability or what they would care about depending on the tenure. Because I think that's an interesting concept at the C suite.
It is. Yeah, that's a really interesting piece to pull out. So the data tells us that at the executive level, folks are most likely to make major purchases, including completely switching out incumbent vendors in their first year.
Mm.
And that's tied to the fact that at the executive level, they have some big goals that they've come in and promised to deliver. So that might mean bringing vendors from their old company with them. That might mean rolling out huge new transformation projects where they need new types of vendors or different types of support or different consultants or whatever it is. So I love focusing on folks that are post 90 days but pre 1 year in role. Like that is a nice sweet spot where they have so they've sort of done their listening tour. They're ready to start making some of those changes, and I would start nurturing them immediately. I wouldn't wait till day 90 to reach out, but maybe day 90 to ask for the meeting. They finish their listening tour, but they're in that like 9 month sweet spot where they're most likely to make big purchases and dramatic changes to the vendors that the company is using. On the flip side of that, I often will deprioritize leads if I see that the ultimate decision maker has been in seat for more than a decade. Because if unless I'm creating a new category where like they've never had a chance to purchase this type of thing before, it's like if they haven't seen the value in the past 10 years, I'm surely not the first sales rep that's ever reached out to them that's tried to get them to buy something like this. So I'm not saying I wouldn't maybe nurture them or I wouldn't sell them, but I sure as heck wouldn't put them on my list of like top 30 accounts I want to penetrate this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I think there's a bit of a balance. Too long in seat, they're probably going to be a bit more resistant. Brand new in seat, they're going to be really likely to consider, at least be open to changes. At the executive level, they'll also have they'll have the ability to push those changes internally. That's what they were, that's what they were hired for. Once you get below the executive level, I think I would focus less on tenure and I would immediately point people to the challenger customer framework of buying personas. I don't know how many of the folks listening have read the challenger customer. It is maybe my favorite sales book of all time. Every single B2B sales professional that is going to reach out to a prospect in 2023 needs to read that book or listen to that book or at least do like the Blinkets or the Sparks notes. I don't know. It's super, super powerful. But I think the gist is at that point, make sure that you know who your mobilizers are. And just as importantly, make sure you know who your blockers are. Because it can be somebody that's 5 years in seat that is a mobilizer, and it doesn't matter, it's 5 years. It can be somebody that's 5 years in seat that's a blocker, 1 year, whatever it is. So outside of that ultimate decision maker, maybe outside of that executive level, when we're talking about influencers or product decision makers, focus more on the buying persona, I think, versus those sort of data points I threw out.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And I want to, as we're in closing here, I want to ask you one last question. I mean, as someone who's helped lead sales teams that won accounts like Toyota, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, Heinz Kraft, I mean, those are not small fish. Those are massive companies. What do you train your reps in terms of the mindset side of breaking into key accounts? Because I know it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of volume, it's a lot of value, it's a lot of personalization, it's a lot of strategy. You're not just using a sequence that your SDR manager wrote that, maybe the first line is personalized a little bit about current state or whatever.
Right.
You're actually looking around and doing a lot more diligence, a lot more research and strategy, and also adding a lot more value. Even if, like you said, it's a handwritten note or video prospecting, or if they're active on LinkedIn voicemails and doing things outside the box. What do you coach reps on in terms of mindset when it comes to the hard work that goes behind breaking into key accounts that you've seen your sales teams be successful using?
Yeah. You know what? Let me give one piece of advice around mindset and then two like very actionable pieces of advice, because let's be honest, like mindset can only take us so far.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta have the good mindset, but like just because you're positive doesn't mean you're going to close Pepsi, Toyota,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, my very first job out of college, I was cold calling on Fortune 1000 CFOs. And this just happened to be in the middle of the Great Recession. So it's like very casual job. I definitely did not go home and cry. But what it taught me, and some of this like chalk it up to naivety that I like truly didn't understand, like how big of a deal a Fortune 250 CFO was, that they are like the people that move and shake it with the world. What it taught me is that they are just humans. Like truly, that's the mindset, right? Like they wake up every day, they put their pants on, or maybe now that we're work from home, like their shorts on, one leg at a time. Like, they have a sick kid, they have a thing that they're worried about. Like they are humans and they feel the same human emotions that we feel. And I think the most important mindset that you can have is just acknowledging that they maybe more even than other prospects, like crave a bit of that humanity in the sales process. Like they want to connect with and feel like they're being served by the human that is truly there to make their lives easier. So I would say that's the mindset piece. On the very, very actionable piece, my gosh, Chet, the amount of times I see reps show up to demos and like haven't done call prep,
Mm-hmm.
or did like 5 minutes of quick call prep before they jumped on the call. It's insane to me. Like, oh my gosh, you just got the CFO of freaking Bank of America to agree to meet with you, and you spent 5 minutes preparing. Weird choice. So never underestimate the value of call prep. Like I was in a player coach role for a while, like in my last role when I was calling on chief procurement officers. So I kind of got both sides of it, where I was doing the calls and then I was also coaching people how to do the calls. And it was a 30-minute process minimum, sometimes longer, to prepare for those demos, like going deep on LinkedIn, on what is happening with their company, on what the CEO statement is, what's happening with their finances, what's happening with their competitors, what's happening with their customers, like just deep, go super, super deep, so that when you are doing your discovery, it sounds like you know what the heck you're talking about. And then the second piece, and this is, I hope people stay till the end because this is it. When creating proposals, ask your decision maker. There's always going to be some sort of internal, like 2023 project, or this is the 2025 goal, and it's going to have an internal strap line, like optimize for efficiency, like scaling to the moon. There's going to be some sort of internal strap line language that they're using. Get that piece of information and then build that into your proposal everywhere. Because again, you're not building a proposal for just that CFO that you've spoke to read. The influencers, maybe their boss, maybe procurement, maybe who knows, they're all going to read it. And then they're reading something that's been written in their own internal language. And my gosh, that's a game changer. Like the amount of people that have followed up with me to tell me how cool that was and how they've never seen that before. Blows my mind. So do that.
I love it. No, that's great. And I like that story that you told about your first job out of college. And you were like, I was probably didn't understand that the people I were talking to make the world go round. And I was a little naive about it. Like, I feel like we all have those moments sometimes in gigs where we're like, oh, wow, I didn't understand the brevity of what's at play. No, I love it. Leslie, this has been really informative. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. It feels like everybody wants to jump on the podcast and talk about outbound. So it's nice to get someone that's talking about something bigger and more strategic that takes a lot more work, that adds a lot more value to the process in it. And I completely agree. I've evaluated probably 30, 40 pieces of tech on behalf of Jelly Smack for the last year. And I mean, we're an 1,800 person company, and the people that show up to some of these calls, it's like, I may be the sales development leader. I still have 22 people that report to my department alone. This isn't like an SDR manager looking at some tech for some point solution for 5 of their reps. Like, I'm looking for something for our sales org of 85 people just in our territory alone. It's not we're not Bank of America, but we're definitely not a small fish. And it seems like people basically are just like, yeah, I see you're the sales development leader at Jelly Smack. It's like, oh, great job, Sherlock Holmes.
So and, I think that's actually the full circle moment, Chet, that like the buyer-centric way to sell is having a deep respect for other people's time. And that's the time you're asking them to take reading your email, to meet with you, to consider purchasing your product or solution. And I think like the big call to action is that we as sellers, it's our responsibility to earn that right at every step of the way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Leslie, this has been fantastic, and I appreciate you going over time. We might actually split this into 2 parts the week of release, so we'll have a 2-parter. I like that we kind of dove into 2 separate areas of the conversation.
We know everybody on TikTok loves a part 2.
Yeah, that's right. Keep them coming back for more. If people want to interact with you or ask you a question or engage with you, where's the best place to interact? Where would you steer everybody to?
LinkedIn is my primary channel. So find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Leslie Venetz. But I am also very active on TikTok at Sales Tips Talk.
Awesome. And we will put links to Leslie's LinkedIn as well as her TikTok in the show notes below. And for anybody looking to engage with the Sales RX community, we'll have access to some of those resources as well. We appreciate everybody, all you first-time listeners and repeat listeners, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, Leslie. What's up, Sales RXers? Thank you for listening to today's episode. We really appreciate you giving us the time in your day to listen to this week's installment, and I hope you found it insightful. That said, I did make a promise at the beginning of the episode that if you stuck all the way through, we would have a special offer for you, and we do. Now listen up, if you're anything like me, you know that social selling is critical to you and your team's success. It's not just enough to cold call and cold email anymore. You have to be doing something different to stand out from the crowd. Now, that said, we spend a lot of time here at the Sales Doctor prospecting and social selling on LinkedIn, and it's very challenging. You have to get information to and from your CRM, track LinkedIn conversations, get prospect data. Next thing you know, you're 5 tools deep and you're spending all your time in this massive cross-reference of data and information. You're stepping on people's toes on different accounts with different contacts. You're messing things up. It's a pain in the butt. That's why I've partnered with Surf. They allow you to float your CRM on top of your prospects' LinkedIn profiles with a bilateral sync of not only activity and information related to your contact, but also they help you find your contact's information directly from LinkedIn. So if I go to a company's page that I'm prospecting and I want to find their head of sales and have a conversation, I don't need to manage a bunch of different tools. I can go exactly to his or her LinkedIn profile. I can add that contact to my CRM directly from LinkedIn. And I can also find their phone number and their email using Surf. The great thing is later on when one of my reps wants to go have a conversation with that head of sales, they can see any activity that I've had, that I'm the owner of the account, the life cycle of the lead or the contact. All the information from the CRM is back on the LinkedIn view. It allows us to sell more effectively and spend more time doing what we want to do, which is having sales conversations. So I partnered with Surf, and they're giving a heck of an offer. In the show description, you'll find a link to download a free 14-day trial of their premium version of Surf. This is a tool that companies pay upwards of $400 per year, per rep, per seat, and you get it for free for 2 weeks with 25 email finder credits. That's right. If you go to the link in the show description now and download the free 14-day premium trial of Surf, you will also be given 25 email finder credits as well. This way you can start prospecting and social selling on LinkedIn without having to navigate between multiple tools. So go in the show description, click on the link, download Surf today. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you on next week's episode.